It's time for Blue and White Breakdown on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450. Sponsored by Joel Confer Toyota and Joel Confer BMW. This is the place to be for news and analysis around Penn State football, basketball, and all 29 other sports. Call the show at 814-272-9625. That's 814-272-9625. Now, here's your hosts of Blue and White Breakdown, Matt Bortner and Zach Seyko.
He's back. Oh, it's great to be back. Zach Seyko, Matt Bortner here. It's Blue and White Breakdown. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Wait, you were gone?
Oh, I hope you didn't replace me with...
Yeah, just like, I don't know. The show went on.
You bring the Lord into the studio. The Lord
Our
was
Lord and Savior.
The Lord was with us, Jason Lord, last week, and it's always nice when the Lord graces us with His presence.
We could all use more of the Lord.
But I do want to thank Jason and yourself, both were the birthday wishes in for covering for me while I was out of the office.
What'd you do?
I went to the Six Flags in New Jersey, the Great Adventure, and then stayed in Atlantic City. But I did not use my paycheck. I did not gamble.
Really?
It was more of a that will be a second. That will be a follow-up trip.
I don't know. I'm disappointed in you. I was expecting you to come back richer.
That will be. No, it was more of a I don't want to lose money. I
feel you there.
I will sightsee this time, and then maybe if I'm feeling a little lucky, we will go back, and it will be a grand old time. But yes, this is Blue and White Breakdown, sponsored by Joel Confer Toyota and BMW and Joel Confer Quality Pre-Owned in Pleasant Gap. You can shop Joel Confer Toyota and BMW 24/7 at joelconfer.com. In this show, a big recruiting update for Penn State football. Who's committed? Who's still on the horizon? Who are they in play for? Names that are, going, are you getting hot, or are you getting a little cold? Take you through our player and play of the game. Also look across other sports like Penn State men's basketball, Penn State wrestling, give you an update. Even though there are no events, no games going on quite yet, the Lift for Life, a big event. We're going to talk about that a little bit extensively and wrap up, of course, with our Across the Conference Around the Big Ten segment, sponsored by the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau. Let's begin with this. Yazeed Haynes, that 3-star, and depending on where you look, 24/7 has him as a 3-star, and On3.com has him as a 4-star, and a big prospect for Penn State to pick up. Well, once again, guess who's in the backyard? The Bulldogs, the Georgia Bulldogs, have offered Yazeed Haynes a scholarship. Do you think is this going to happen again like it did with Joshua Miller, an under-the-radar 3-star that Penn State got out in front of first, and now the better offers here? Is Haynes going to jump ship and follow Miller down to Georgia?
I have no idea on the front of where he chooses to go. I can tell you this, and probably a discussion we'll have with the newest additions to Penn State's class of 2023 as well, is that's probably with teams on the prowl, one of the biggest things you're going to have to do now. It's not getting the initial commitment from a guy, it's sealing that commitment. It's
all the time.
It's fending those guys off from getting a better offer, visiting after they've committed to Penn State, and that's one of the things James Franklin has been, what he stresses with his recruits. Now, I get why if another offer comes across, you're going to look at it, but James Franklin wants these guys to be committed right away, and as a coach, that makes sense because you try to make it as easy on yourself to try and keep a guy. But in the case of Yazeed Haynes, I have no idea. I have no idea what the talks were with him, but I'll tell you this: it confirms some of the talk about him as being a riser in the rankings. I would assume that this offer from Georgia as well, when we see sort of, I don't know how often these places update their player rankings. The team rankings are always changing, but the player rankings, I'm sure you'll see a jump in Yazeed Haynes because of that in their next evaluation. But it's notable news because, again, especially a team like Penn State that gets out in front of guys early, you're going to have to protect your turf.
You have to. You have to the way that Penn State recruits.
Yeah, you can't stop. So you get a commitment. Your recruitment process is not done on a kid. You're recruiting until you get that kid signed on the dotted line.
I think that's even the case a step further with the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
You have to recruit all the time. I mean, look at Jordan Addison, for crying out loud.
Yep.
Jordan Addison got $3 million in a house and whatever else have you, and took a one-way trip out to Southern California. And what was Pitt supposed to do? Well, we'll give you.
You can play in front of 25% capacity for 3/4 of your games.
We will give you gift cards to Giant Eagle, and.
Yeah, I would assume they had.
For Manny Brothers.
I would assume there was probably a 6-figure counter for him. I would assume
not a 7-figure.
Yeah, not a 7-figure. I'm not going to say that there wasn't probably a hefty counter for him, but yeah, I mean, in their instance, the only thing you're really hoping for is the loyalty there.
Here's the last thing I want to add about Yazeed Haynes, and it's not to be skeptical or anything. But you do have to put it out there that he was committed to Rutgers at one point, got a better offer, and he flipped to Penn State. So I'm not saying it is out of the realm that, oh, look, you get, how does he deem it? Does he deem Georgia as a better offer? That's exactly what happened to Josh Miller when he posted about it on his social media, the offensive lineman. If you're not on social media, that's fine. But he made everybody aware that he was proud of his offer by Georgia. Yeah. So, again, is the grass greener on the other side of it for Haynes as well? Possibly, because he's already done it once.
Yeah.
Or is that going to hold him back? I don't know. And I will also point this out. Penn State has a lot of receivers, just in general, over the course of the next 3 years. Between Caden Saunders is obviously the immediate future prospect that still comes to mind, but you got a lot of guys that are still in that freshman-sophomore range that are going to be that 1 year ahead of you, and it's just going to be very crowded. We're going to see a lot of guys transfer out from the wide receiver position.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank goodness for Taylor Stubblefield for finally adding some reassurance, a foundation at that skilled position. But sometimes you can't have 7, 8, 9 receivers on the field at once.
You know what's also enticing about that, though, is if you look at Penn State for a recruiting standpoint of a receiver coming in, it's maybe 1 or 2 guys a year you have cemented, sometimes only really one at tops, where you're like, okay, this guy's the guy that is going to be playing 90% of the snaps. As a recruit as well, even though they're recruiting well, you also look into the fact that you say, okay, I have a chance to break this lineup. So there is that factor, but I think we're probably getting to the point, especially the numbers game of, yes, there has been Penn State wide receivers that have gotten great grades coming into Penn State. Juwan Johnson, he wasn't the star that we thought he would be, but he was productive. Big plays. You look at Shorter, he never lived up to the hype. But I would say the number of guys that you have at that level are as high as they have ever been, and that would probably lead to the fact of, okay, if you see where this lineup is heading, maybe I would be a guy that transfers out. But, I mean, that's the nature of college football now.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is. It's Blue and White Breakdown here on ESPN Radio. Tomarrion Parker committed to Penn State, another member of the class of 2023. 4-star defensive lineman.
Yeah, this is a massive get. I mean,
easiest way to say it.
Yeah, 6'4", 250 pounds. I didn't know what you were going to add there. I just need to interject and say it is a massive get, and sort of I think this was one that of these 2 guys that Penn State got, this was probably somewhat shocking to a lot of national pundits that Penn State landed Tomarrion Parker.
Yeah. Georgia was the leading candidate. And once again, who are we seeing? Penn State versus Georgia.
Yeah, I know Tennessee and Florida were very heavily involved with him as well. In terms of the Big Ten, it was Michigan State. Yes, Penn State was on his radar, but I don't think if you would have flat out asked many people, they would have said he's coming to Penn State.
And guess who else was in that mix for him as well? Florida. And guess who he was recruited by? Sean Spencer.
Yeah.
Anybody remembers that name?
Yeah. Yep.
Sean Spencer used to be the D-line coach. John Scott wins the battle. Love to see it. No disrespect towards Sean Spencer. Spencer's a very good coach and appreciated his time, of course, in Happy Valley. DaKaari Nelson also committing to Penn State, a member of the class of 2023. And guess where he's from? Alabama. This is the first time in a while I think in ever that Penn State's really had some impact in that state as far as recruiting goes.
Yeah, since 2001, Penn State has had just 4 players from Alabama on its roster, and currently it's Harrison Wallace, who we've heard some nice things about his development at wide receiver.
Another receiver, yep.
Yeah, all of these guys had been 3 stars. This trio that all played from 14 to 17 were, I would say they were all very effective players, and Christian Campbell, Parker Cothran, and Torrance Brown. Torrance Brown's career ended shortly because of injury. I think he was really on the right track. But they were very valuable players for Penn State. I think Auburn's woes right now have helped in trying to get some of these guys as well, and especially you win the head-to-head battle. And simply put, Alabama is a very, very fertile ground for college football players, and Alabama can't take all of them. Yeah. I think that's part of it.
They just picked up a 5-star defensive back. But this Nelson's already drawn. I mean, he drew a couple comparisons immediately to, guess who? Marcus Allen, because Marcus Allen has that similar size. And how else are you going to compare players when they have similar size and they play the same position? I think Marcus Allen was better at finding ball carriers, but what I will say about Nelson is he's got that same attribute, but I think he's going to be a little more helpful in coverage. Marcus Allen was never really a coverage guy, and I think Nelson will be better at that when all's said and done.
And we've seen it more lately, and I think even more defined with Manny Diaz coming in, that star position being a real focal point of his roster at times, where you could see 3 safeties out on the field at once. So that star position, sort of that outside linebacker safety hybrid. He's the 270th overall player. This is all according to 247 Sports, number 23 overall safety, 15th in the state of Alabama. Parker is the 48th overall player, number 6 defensive lineman, and number 6 in the state of Alabama. So getting those wins in SEC country are massive gets for James Franklin. And they're not like we talked about those other guys being 3 stars. These are 4 stars, one of them being a top 50 commit. So this past week, you get 2 4 stars from the state of Alabama coming to Pennsylvania. Massive for James Franklin and his staff.
Coming up after the break, we are going to continue to talk about Penn State football recruiting and the prospects to watch for. Some commitments coming up. Tony Rojas, Tamir Robinson, where we think they will land, if they will choose Happy Valley, or will they go somewhere else, plus to give you a look at the updated team rankings for the class of 2023. Some other Penn State football news later on in the show. We will talk about men's basketball news, wrestling, field hockey, and much more, wrapping up the show with Across the Conference around the Big Ten here on ESPN Radio. It's Blue and White Breakdown, sponsored by Joel Comfort, Toyota, and BMW.
Welcome back to Blue and White Breakdown on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450. Time for the guys to nominate the player of the game.
It is a 2-man nomination from the Penn State men's track and field team.
Yeah, they continue, even after the season, continue to show their flashes as we're getting to now the world competition part of track and field for the under-20 championships coming up in Cali, Colombia in August. That's Colin Burkhart and James Onwuka from the Penn State men's track and field team. Burkhart, both of them freshmen, finished second in men's hammer throw at the United States Track and Field Under-20 Outdoor Championships in Eugene, Oregon. He set a new personal best of 72.58 meters. And then Onwuka, also setting a personal best, ran a 47.32 in the 400 meter at the African Under-20 Championships. And he earns a spot on the Nigerian Under-20 team. So you'll see both of them in the World Championships for the Under-20 teams in Cali, Colombia in August. So those are two freshmen excelling, and exciting to see what they can do for their next 3 years at Penn State as well.
Play of the game coming up after that, and we'll see how that follows up our two athletes of the week, Colin Burkhart and James Onwuka. This is Blue and White Breakdown on State College's ESPN Radio, sponsored by Joel Comfort Quality Pre-Owned. Come see the Joel Comfort Quality Pre-Owned difference for yourself. Joel Comfort Quality Pre-Owned, 475 East College Avenue in Pleasant Gap, or visit them 24/7 online at joelcomfortqualitypreowned.com. He's Matt Bortner. I'm Zach Seyko. We're picking up where we left off with Penn State football recruiting. We talked about Tomarrion Parker and DaKaari Nelson, now shifting gears to guys who are still yet to pick a school, yet to pick a program. Tony Rojas is first the day after the 4th of July. That's Tuesday, July 5th. Outside linebacker. With the way that he's dropped hints, just kind of boasting about the Penn State football classes, like, just like, to the moon, the rocket ship emoji on his personal social media, immediately following Parker and Nelson. I think he's going to commit. It's a subtle hint, but he just seems very enthused about what Penn State football is doing, and those could be his future teammates.
Yeah, and he also has something in common with him and Tamir Robinson. Both have something in common with like Tomarrion Parker and some of the other guys that we've seen from Penn State, and that is, as soon as they've gotten done visiting Penn State, it's either committing to Penn State. I think Yazeed Haynes was one of those a couple days after visiting Penn State, commits to Penn State, or sets their commitment date, which has then led to them choosing Penn State. Now, I think these two will be, I would say there is more competition than some of the others. Well, Tomarrion Parker, obviously, that is a huge get for them. He's their third highest rated player. But these two are very sought after players. Rojas out of Virginia, Tamir Robinson, the top player by some in Pennsylvania. And Jason and I talked about it a little last week. It seems like there's a possibility for this to sort of be a tandem commitment for Penn State. They both sort of talked about what it would like to be some of those edge/outside linebacker rushers for Penn State. So, keep your ears open for both of those commitments. The Rojas commitment, the one coming up first here on July 5th.
I think that I'm more confident in Tony Rojas committing to Penn State than I am Tamir Robinson. And not to say that both won't. I'm confident that both will. It just seems, and Rojas did have the competition. He visited Miami, visited Clemson, he visited Georgia. Oh, look at that again, the Bulldogs. And someone needs to put those dogs on a leash. But Tamir Robinson, really the schools that were competing the most were Miami and Arkansas. So I think Penn State's the best of the bunch when it comes to those few schools for Robinson, but I like both of them to commit. Some other names. Yeah, well,
Miami's a wild card with the amount. I mean, we'll get to that around the conference, but they're a wild card with the amount of money they're throwing around, supposedly, right now.
Yeah, I could go on a tangent rant about that if we have the time. Jason Moore is another name to look at, defensive end. DeMatha, you and I are both from the Maryland area.
Yeah, he's an excellent player, but Notre Dame's and Penn State and Notre Dame the last couple of years have really duked it out on some very high-profile prospects. This is the one that most people have a heavy lean for him going to Notre Dame right now.
Yeah.
But we'll see if James Franklin can get a late flip there.
Number 1 player in Maryland.
Yes.
Cameron Seldon. He's a Virginia athlete, considering Penn State, Tennessee, and Maryland.
He was just here over the weekend, so...
Trayon Webb, a running back out of Florida. Juwan Sider's done an incredible job. His roots are obviously in Florida, so he's still recruiting, though, and bringing the players up north. He's the 160th player overall, and it's really between him and Landon Montgomery. Montgomery's out of Scranton.
Yeah.
He's a lower-rated running back, but honestly, I like Montgomery's game. I like both of their games. Webb's bigger. Webb's 6'1" and 200 pounds. Landon Montgomery 5'10", about 180. He will put on muscle as time goes on. So Webb's more of a college-ready running back, but I don't know. I just like the way that Montgomery sees the field out of the backfield.
Yeah, this might be the case where this might be either or. I'm not sure if Penn State is ready to go in on 2 running backs in this class. So
They did it this year.
Yeah, well, the 2 guys they got, though, were much higher rated than the 2 they got that they would get here. And also, I think it just all depends on... Now you're looking at some of the other guys you're trying to get at other positions, and now that you did get 2 in last year's class, that you have some of those young guys in now. But I would think Trayon Webb would be the guy that obviously would want more, but Florida is their main competition there, and I would think if they don't get him, Landon Montgomery's probably a slam dunk for Penn State to get.
I think Landon Montgomery really wants to go to Penn State. For Trayon Webb, it's about staying home and going to the Gators of Florida or coming up to Penn State. So it's not... I think Montgomery will actually still commit to Penn State even if they don't get Trayon. Whether or not they get Webb, I think Montgomery's a lock to come to Penn State. King Mack, also out of Florida, he's a safety. Feels like Penn State's getting a lot of guys in the secondary, but I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I think especially the secondary, I mean, how well they've played and how much they use different guys in the secondary has really attracted a lot of guys to look at Penn State, and the success of those guys not only at Penn State and not only their position they've been drafted, but I think the success at the next level is really translating well for Penn State.
Michigan State seems to be the biggest competitor here. And the last player on this list that we want to make a note of, edge rusher Neo Avery from Good Counsel, another Maryland school, Maryland powerhouse school. I'm surprised that Penn State is back in the competition, because when Avery decommitted, it felt like he didn't even have them in their top 5.
Yeah. I'm not too caught up on Neo Avery's position, but I know he is high on Penn State's trail. I'll also throw another one in there, Kavion Keys. He was just part of Penn State's seven guys to visit over the weekend. He is a 4-star linebacker out of Virginia, so that would be another hot name to look at as well. So, I mean, just all in all, it's right now looking like Penn State can make this top 3 class as of now look even better.
And the new team rankings for 2023 look like this. Notre Dame's number 1, and they got a lot of 4-star prospects. It's starting to sort itself out a little bit. Yeah. We saw Northwestern in the top 5. We saw Cincinnati because they had 15, 16 3-star recruits. Good for them. But as these 4-stars and 5-stars do due diligence and take their time with their decisions, now you're seeing Ohio State in the top 5 at number 2. Penn State's moved back up to 3. Clemson's at 4. Texas at 5. Arkansas at 6 with that Walmart money. Georgia's at 7.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's going to beat out Notre Dame this year, because if you still
look at that, they make a coaching switch and now they get better.
You can Brian Kelly, in terms of keeping them consistent and on-field coaching. I think his biggest. He's a
good coach, but gosh, he's a terrible guy to work with.
Yes, that, and he never really quarterback development was a big issue under Brian Kelly. But Freeman he's a
Jimmy Clausen never worked out. Brady Quinn.
Well, Brady Quinn was fantastic at Notre Dame.
Yeah, in college.
Yeah, but I'm talking about at the college. And Brady Quinn wasn't a Brian Kelly guy. That was Charlie Weiss.
That is true.
I actually think Clausen was Charlie Weiss guy too.
Oh, gosh, 0 for 2 here. Yikes. All right, well, Notre Dame quarterbacks.
But yeah, they've got a lot of big time commits still possibly coming their way. So I honestly don't see anybody overtaking Notre Dame.
Marcus Freeman.
Yeah.
Really, that's...
I mean, he was one of the staples under Brian Kelly.
Oh, yeah,
he
holding...
did. I mean, he was the players' coach under them, him and Tommy Rees. So no surprise to me that they've been able to do well there.
And I don't see LSU anywhere near the top 10, top 15. That's fine. Brian Kelly's just very, very unlikable. He's funny to make fun of, but...
Yeah, I think also, too, he doesn't... I could be wrong, but I don't think he transitions well into the NIL part of this, and that being a part where he can get guys in with. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's starting to turn towards a young coach's type of game. And understand,
not even just young coaches, a likable coach.
Yeah, that's part of it. You need to have a personality and not be so stoic. We will take a break. This is Blue and White Breakdown. When we come back, we're going to start to look at the other news and headlines for men's basketball, wrestling, also talk about the Lift for Life, and nominate our play of the game. It's right here on State College's ESPN Radio.
It's time for the play of the game on Blue and White Breakdown.
Long and deep far side, reaches out and juggles, got it, touchdown, Penn State!
What a lot of folks bought tickets for. The Penn State offense against the Oregon defense. The ball is at the 16-yard line. It is first down for the Lions with Milne and Kajana Carter lined up in the backfield. Brady Scott is the man in motion. Here's Carter. And breaks it. He's gone. Goodbye. It'll be touchdown, Penn State, first play of the ball game.
Another big throwback. And a big run from Kajana Carter.
Yeah, part of one of the best teams. Many lists will say, definitely one of the best offenses to never win a national championship, and you could put it up there as one of the best teams to never win a national championship. That was from the 1995 Rose Bowl, where Carter ripped off an 83-yard touchdown on the first play from scrimmage, finished with 21 carries for 156 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. It was Nebraska who ended up winning the outright national title. Them being undefeated, Nebraska that year, I don't know if I would have. Again, I wasn't watching football back then, but for it to at least not be a share of the national title when those two teams never played each other it just shows you, even though we don't have a perfect system now, it shows you how much better the system got with the BCS championship game, that you at least had two of the top teams playing each other every year, and now you've got... Now, you could debate if they got those teams always right, same with the college football playoff now, but you're at least having some of these teams play head-to-head to actually come up with the crown rather than a voter making the decision. So, I mean, that year was crazy. Penn State dropped from number 1 in the rankings despite beating a ranked Ohio State team 63-14 that week. Imagine that now, a team beating a ranked team 63-14 and dropping in the rankings.
Teams move up when they play Tennessee State. Mercer, late in the season, and let's jump them up a couple of spots. They had a good quality win. Good quality win.
Actually, pretty funny about that game is, despite Penn State winning so... I wouldn't say easily. The first half was a close game there. I don't know how many of these still stand, but Oregon's quarterback, Danny O'Neal, broke 13 Rose Bowl records in that game, throwing for 456 yards passing. I would assume that probably got broken this past year's with Ohio State and Utah in that shootout, I would think.
Yeah.
But
Kajana Carter had 156 yards in that game, the 83-yard touchdown, 3 rushing touchdowns on 21 attempts. It's Blue and White Breakdown, sponsored by Joel Comfort Toyota and BMW and Joel Comfort Quality Pre-Owned in Pleasant Gap. You can rent a Toyota at Joel Comfort Toyota Rent-A-Car, 120 East Clinton Avenue in State College. Other Penn State football news to wrap up with that sport. Parker Washington, in the Pro Football Focus rankings, they do a little bit of college as well, and they have him as a top 10 wide receiver in next year's draft. It's never too early to talk about the 2023 NFL draft.
I'd agree with that. So
I think he might even slot his way into top 5.
Yes. So he was helped out immensely with one of the best wide receivers in college football last year in Jahan Dotson. But that's not taking away. It is noticeable, especially with his hands and his ability to go up and get the ball at the slot position, that he can create separation. He is sure-handed. He can score touchdowns. But I think it'll be interesting to see if anybody can step up behind him and sort of help bring the pressure off him, sort of like Washington was able to do that for Jahan Dotson last year. So
hopefully he starts carrying a football around with him everywhere.
Yeah.
They like that about Dotson. Also something cool, the Lift for Life is back for the first time in a while for Uplifting Athletics. There's multiple chapters. It's more than just Penn State. Is resuming, and it will be this Thursday, June 30th. Chris Stoll, who's currently the president of the Penn State chapter, they are hosting the Lift for Life. For those who don't know, it's a friendly competition. You come and you watch and you make donations, and the Penn State football team has lift-offs, essentially, where they might do a bench press competition.
Yeah.
Basically, think of it as the NFL Combine workouts, but Juice Scruggs is going to go up against Olu Fashanu or Landon Tangwall.
Tug of wars, all that jazz. And it's great that it's a student athlete run charity.
Yeah, this is all student athlete. There is no outside influence or any directors or appointees or anything. The football team puts this together and coordinates it, and that's just a great starting point for any sorts of charity foundation type of work they do after Penn State.
Yeah, and it's up to a total Penn State's chapter of $1.4 million raised for rare diseases. I think we'll get a chance to do a little talking to some of the players and coaches again. Yeah. So
you and I will be there along with the Lord. Jason Lord will be with us.
It'd be nice to get some more updates from within the program, but even better yet, a good event for a great cause.
And they are going to take place from 5 to 6:30. The event's going to take place from 5 to 6:30. If you want to go,
open to the public.
Yes, if you want to go, they recommend a donation. You technically don't have to, but don't be a Scrooge in this case. It is $10 for adults, $5 for children, and this is all towards battling rare diseases. Every dollar is going, and the players are probably making money from NIL. Nope. Every single dollar that is going towards Lift for Life, Uplifting Athletics, goes to a great cause.
Yeah, and it's funny we talk about Lift for Life now. It's still a workout day for these players, but you hear about, especially under the Paterno era, how they would say this was like their toughest workout every year. Now, it's not that type of event anymore, but you go look up some stories about guys talking about Lift for Life. It's pretty comical.
Lift for Life, again, Thursday, June 30th, outside of where are they holding it? Are they holding it at Haluba Hall this year, or are they holding it? Because in the past, they've actually...
I think over at the lacrosse field?
They held it at Panzer, what is now Panzer Stadium, but where the lacrosse...
I believe it is at Panzer Stadium.
Okay.
Somewhere in that area. You won't be able to miss it, though.
Yes.
When you get park over there at the BJC.
If you go up University Drive, you can't miss it. Let's just put it that way. But yes, this Thursday, June 30th. I just didn't want to direct people in the wrong area.
We'll make sure to give you the right answer.
Nowhere near Rec Hall. Let's just put it that way. While Matt gets confirmation on that, whether it's at Panzer Stadium, the lacrosse field, or outside of Haluba Hall, that is to be confirmed. Penn State men's basketball getting new jerseys, getting new opponents. They are set to play Clemson at Clemson, Death Valley. Oh, Happy Valley goes to Death Valley.
Yeah.
Oh, in the Big Ten ACC Challenge.
Yeah, and probably a fair matchup here. Clemson was 17-16 last year, 10th in the ACC.
I just want Penn State to host Duke.
Yeah.
That is my pipe dream for Duke to come play at the Bryce Jordan Center in my time.
I think we're a little off from that ever happening. Hopefully, Micah Shrewsbury can get him down that road.
Yes. Yes. I
like
the way you think.
Last time they played was 2005 in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. Clemson won 96-88. Gary Claxton led all scorers in that game with 27 points. Would have loved to see him, what he could have done in his senior year if he didn't blow out his ACL. That was a crusher for Penn State when he blew out his ACL. I think he might have been a first-round draft pick that year if he did not do that.
My slight connection to Clemson men's basketball, he doesn't play for them anymore, but if you remember, Marquise Reed bounced around a little bit college basketball. He was at Robert Morris one year and then ended up at Clemson. I had French class with him in high school. Yeah, it's too bad he's not on the team anymore. He's playing overseas, which is neat. And I wish he had. I wish he would. He's a natural scorer, but just wasn't big enough for the NBA. He was about 6'1", and that's crazy thinking that. Oh, he's not that big. He's only 6'1", 6'2". But playing good professional basketball overseas. Speaking of guys who are playing at the next level, Isaiah Brockington is signing with the New Orleans Pelicans, and the New Orleans Pelicans aren't the first. That's not the first time they're taking a chance on a former Penn State basketball player. It's a shame Tony Carr didn't work out with them.
Yeah, I think Tony Carr's still overseas.
He's in Canada now. Actually,
so not too
scored
far
20.
away.
He scored 20 points for Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan
for just a week ago.
All right.
Playing good old Canadian basketball.
Yeah, I think Brockington could eventually make it. I think he probably has to go the G League route before he would make his way into the pros. But he's a similar comp to Josh Reeves, who ended up making it. I don't know, was it his rookie year that he made it with the Mavs and re-signed the second year? But he went the G League route. They both sort of have similar games. I would say Brockington better shooter than Reeves.
Yeah, Reeves his game was a
better defender.
Much better, lockdown kind of guy.
I mean, but Reeves, he can get to the hoop. He's playing overseas now. I would assume that he's trying to work his way back to the NBA with getting more playing time. So, good for Brockington. We'll see how that goes for him.
And keep you updated on John Hara and what his decision is ultimately for his basketball career as well.
Live for Life is going to be at the Lash practice fields.
All right, there we have it. The Lash practice fields. So be in attendance June 30th, 5 to 6:30. Make a donation of whatever dollar amount you see fit. Penn State Wrestling saw its individual intermat rankings released, and there's a lot of number ones still in the lineup.
Well, I mean, how can you not rank them number one, the four returning national champs in Roman Bravo, Young, Carter, Starachi, Aaron Brooks, and Maxine. So
the only one that's missing
surprising
is Nick Lee because he graduated.
Yeah.
Yes.
Greg Kirkvliet, 2, Bo Bartlett, 17, Robbie Howard, 18, Alex Facundo, at 165 pounds, is number 24. Shane Van Ness at 149 pounds is number 29, and Joe Lee is not ranked at 157 pounds. So again, this is a top-heavy lineup, which in itself is probably good enough to be the contender for the national championship. If you get four winners, you can go on to win it all. But it will be interesting, I think, when you get down to Bo Bartlett and Robbie Howard and then the others to see how far they can rise in their rankings.
outside of RBY, Carter Starachi, Aaron Brooks, Max Dean, and Greg Kirkfleet, guys that are going to be in contention for a national title, who are you most excited about in terms of those prospects? I really like Shane Van Ness. Everyone raved about him when he committed. Or if you're interested in Robbie Howard having a breakout season, he got injured.
To me,
he's going to be the
Howard
lightweight
if he comes back healthy after another little setback. I mean, he showed those flashes as a true freshman. So to me, he would be the guy you really look at. But the health is the biggest issue for him.
And Bo Bartlett should have a breakout as well, moving to 141.
Yeah.
And because he's been wrestling at 149 a good bit, and Bo Bartlett at 141, that's more of his natural weight. And we also had Will Betancourt on the show.
Yep.
He could compete at 125, but this is
definitely going to push at that weight.
Robbie Howard's just the assumed contender, the assumed starter at 125, and because he's got the resume. You can assume,
but I wouldn't, especially with his injuries too, I wouldn't say that's a done deal there for him being the starter. Plus, it might be one of those things where you give both of them opportunities to start the year.
For Penn State field hockey, 7 current and former Penn State field hockey players have been selected for the 2022 Senior Nexus Championship.
Not a bad place for them, taking place to Virginia Beach from July 17th to July 17th through the 22nd of this year, 2022. 5 from the current team: Sophia Acosta, Mackenzie Alessi, Bree Barrico, Sophia Gladeau, and Grace Wallace. 2 former players, Bree Benarski and Jenny Rizzo. So I think this shows that with the current team that a little disappointing for Penn State in the postseason this year, but still they got a lot to look forward to coming up.
Yeah, plenty much so. It's Blue and White Breakdown on State College's ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450. He's Matt Bortner. I'm Zach Seyko. When we come back across the conference, a look around the Big Ten and beyond as NIL has really taken over college football and college sports in general. Give you some updates as far as what programs are benefiting from it, as well as the players just inking these incredible deals. The details of those next.
Hey, it's Penn State men's basketball head coach Micah Shrewsbury, and you're listening to Blue and White Breakdown on State College's ESPN Radio.
This is Blue and White Breakdown on ESPN Radio 103.7 and 1450. It's now time to look across the conference and see where Penn State stands in the Big Ten. Across the Conference is sponsored by Happy Valley Adventure Bureau. You don't need to leave Happy Valley for a great getaway. Plan your staycation today. Visit the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau for day trip ideas.
While Penn State's recruiting gets are good and are respectable, Ohio State just seems to one-up them every time. They got the quarterback Dylan Raplia, the number 1 quarterback commit in the 2023 class. Well, they got weapons around him as well.
Yeah, they landed 2 5-star wide receivers in the matter of 3 days in Brandon Innes and Carnell Tate, both of them, I believe, in the top 30 overall of players. There's probably about 30 to 35 5-star ranked players out there, but they grabbed 2 of them in a matter of 3 days, and then you just, with the fact of how Ohio State has developed quarterbacks in turn with their wide receivers, just the machine is not stopping over in Columbus with Ryan Day.
No, it's not. I do want to make a correction. Dylan Raiola is the quarterback that is committed to, and they just Gage Scott he's a running back, one of the number 2. Yep. He's apparently had a great time at visiting Ohio State. So
yeah, and he also said that I believe it was Tate's commitment is a plus for him in coming to Ohio State as well.
Yes, it is. So Gage, So you have the number 1 running back, potentially the number 2 running back, and then 2 5-star wide receivers.
Not fair.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Yeah. Hopefully this Penn State class. I mean, but Penn State's class as a whole is right there, right there with them. Ohio State's number 2 and Penn State's number 3.
Yeah. The problem is though Penn State's presumably gaining ground with having 2 of those classes in a row. But when you're Ohio State and you have 5 or 6 years of those types of classes in a row, that's what you're trying to. Penn State, again, you probably need to get into the window of having like 3 or 4 of those classes in a row, because you could have 8 in a row, and obviously those guys can't play for that long. So, yeah, it just shows you how much they have to do to stay in competition with Ohio State. They can get there, but it takes a mountain to climb over to get there.
Former Ohio State coach, now Notre Dame head coach, after getting the promotion with Brian Kelly leaving to go to LSU, Marcus Freeman commented on his former schools he coached, saying Ohio State doesn't really hold up its academic standards.
He didn't say specifically Ohio.
Specifically. OHIO.
Yeah, he said at Notre Dame you're forced to go to every day to go to class. You can't cheat academics at Notre Dame. He also coached at Cincinnati as well.
What does that mean, Coach Freeman?
Yeah, I mean, I can take it 2 ways. Yes, Notre Dame and Penn State's the same way with getting players. They hold them to a higher standard in terms of academics. We've seen James Franklin suspend players before for not going to class. I don't know. Just all around, I think you sort of take the grain of salt of all of our players go to class because that's what everybody says. But it's interesting when a guy is throwing shade at schools that he coached for before.
Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, you probably love watching them play football. Well, this will make you feel old. Their nephew just announced his commitment to Texas. He's going to play with Steve Sarkisian, Quinn Ewers. This factors into the Big Ten. Quinn Ewers attended 1 year at Ohio State to collect a $1 million paycheck, flew back to Texas where he's from, is presumed to be the starter, but man, you get the number 1 transfer quarterback and now the number 1 high school quarterback. This is getting really interesting. Why does Arch Manning go to Texas if you're not totally sold on Quinn Ewers?
I mean, I think we're in the time of you take every single best player you can get.
Arch Manning's not there to sit though.
Yeah. But that's the beauty of it all for a player is if things change, I can go somewhere else and not have to hold out a year. You know what I mean?
All the poor Quinn Ewers, all the memes when Quinn Ewers has to enter the transfer portal again, and some of the reactions were funny.
You'd have to say Ewers has the upper hand in that. If he competes at the level that people think he can, they're not just going to give it up for Arch Manning. That you would think that logically that would tell you that, but. Again, we don't know how much money Texas is throwing around or any school. So
to cope with all of this, it's a good thing to have, a good problem to have. 2 former 5-star high school recruits. For Texas, they said it's all a master plan. Quinn Ewers will start this year, next year, and then Arch Manning will redshirt, be the backup for 1 year, and then start 2 years after that, and they'll win multiple national titles. Okay, all right.
Again, Texas is back a lot of times before. A
good problem to cope with.
I'll also say this too. Is Arch Manning as perfect as a prospect as people say, or does I'm not saying he's a bad prospect at all.
But is he meeting that bar? No.
Yeah, I don't know. I think probably his name has a good boost to the rankings. Still can be an excellent. Probably he could still be the number 1 quarterback in that class. But I don't know.
There's a lot of
It's
good
hard,
quarterbacks in this 2023 class, I must admit. And we didn't get all the time in the world to talk about it, but Jaden Rashada committing to Miami gets a reported $9.5 million NIL deal. Most interesting, apparently the Florida Collective, University of Florida, offered him $11 million, turned it down to go to Miami.
Yeah, mega booster John Reese. The report is grossly inaccurate. Rashada just denied it. I don't know, but right or wrong, obviously money's flowing out there. Good for the player, but the sport, I don't know.
You can bleed blue and white every Monday at 5 p.m. with Matt and Zach on ESPN Radio 1037 and 1450. Thanks for listening to Blue and White Breakdown, sponsored by Joel Confer Toyota and Joel Confer BMW.